Today we take for granted the motorways, A-roads and city streets, over 2,000 miles of them that form the skeleton road map of Britain. And all because of the Romans, with their ingenuity and dogged determination to conquer everything in their path.
I'm Dan Jones, and I'm going to retrace the story of our Roman past along 6 of their most iconic roads.
Each road tells the story of our Roman legacy and its rich history. From their very first road across Kent, which powered their invasion, to the vital routes which helped them conquer most of Britain, before being beaten into retreat by the Scots. In nearly 400 years of occupation, the Romans changed Britain forever by bringing their armies, ideas, buildings and religion.
But the Romans couldn't have done any of it without one thing: their roads. This time I'm walking along Ermine Way. It's a road that cuts into the heart of industrial Roman Britain, through the mines and fields that kept the engines of empire firing.
Ermine Way stretches for around 75 miles and was effectively the M4 of its day. It starts in Silchester near Reading and runs west through the Cotswolds towards Cirencester and Gloucester. From there it links to the road system built by the Romans in Wales to exploit the valuable mineral resources there. Ermine Way has a similar name to that other major Roman road, Ermine Street, which runs from London to York, but they're totally different. We don't know how the Romans referred to them because they acquired their current names centuries later. Ermine Way is arguably the most industrial of all our Roman roads and reveals how the Roman conquest of Britain wasn't just about military glory. Our land had resources in abundance: iron, lead, clay, wood and manpower. The Romans gave us the impetus to exploit them on an industrial scale for the first time, and showed us the skills to transform them into valuable goods. The Romans weren't just here to rule, they were here to industrialize the natives for the good of the empire and line their own pockets.
People often ask, what did the Romans ever do for us? But I want to find out, what did we ever do for the Romans?
My journey starts at Silchester, or to call it by its Roman name, Caleva. Just 10 miles from Reading, it's been called the British equivalent of Pompeii. When the Romans left Britain, no town sprang up on top of it, which means Caleva is very well preserved under the soil. Archaeologists have been excavating it for more than 100 years. The city would once have covered 99 acres, surrounded by a defensive wall, one of the few Roman remains visible above ground today. Professor Michael Fulford has been studying Caleva for 20 years. I'm hoping he'll tell me how the road network helped make this prosperous and well-defended settlement possible.
Tell me about these walls. I mean, they seem enormous and they go on for,
a mile and a half.
Why were they built at such scale?
They are fantastic, and also a tribute to the road system, because the stones which are used for these levelling courses, these come from literally all points of the compass. So you've got stone coming in from the direction of Swindon, along the roads from there. You've got stone coming in from the north, from Oxford, Farringdon, that area, from the southeast, from the Western Weald, sort of the Hampshire-Surrey border. The nearest material is the flint here. The nearest source is, 6 or 7 miles down south towards Basingstoke. So it's a tremendous tribute to the effectiveness of the road system that this wall is here at all.
So I suppose when they decided they wanted to build this wall, it was a call in all directions for stone wherever we can find it.
Yes, yes. And then the carts to carry it, because we're talking about tens of thousands of cartloads to bring the material for a wall, which is at the base. It's 10 Roman feet thick at the base, and it narrows a bit as you come up towards the top.
How did the road network help with Silchester's prosperity, and which roads came into the town?
Well, you've got the main road coming out of London coming through here, and that's the road basically which takes all traffic to South Wales and all traffic down the southwest right through down to Exeter.
So Silchester was very well linked to other towns in Roman Britain?
Yes.
And was that part of Silchester's prosperity?
I think so, yes, very much so. It drew on its hinterland for agriculture. The people with the wealthy townhouses presumably had estates out in the country, and that was part of their wealth. But yes, the traffic going to and from must have been a really important part of Silchester's life.
The town of Callava sat on an important crossroads. A road now known as the Devil's Highway connected it with the provincial capital Londinium. From here it divided into other roads, heading west to Devon and Cornwall, important production centres for food and tin. When the Romans abandoned Britain in the 5th century AD, their buildings were not maintained by the population left behind. The native Britons cannibalised the stonework to use on their own, more modest buildings. Michael's 20 years of studies to uncover the Roman town here have mixed traditional excavation techniques with modern technology. Geophysical soil surveys have revealed the layout and treasures on the site, many of which are still undiscovered beneath the surface.
We're looking kind of over there, looking towards the north side of the town and the north gate, more or less directly opposite us now. And roughly in the middle and dominating the town is the Forum Basilica, the main administrative building of the town. Down here, close to us where the ground is at its lowest, where the public baths were located, the water being sourced quite locally. And then in front of us, you've got a range of houses, all sizes. Just over to our left is this big building for the imperial postal courier system, the Cursus Publicus, that's just here. I mean, the great thing about this town wall and what is you get a sense of how big the kind of average Roman town was. So yeah, everything encompassed, and then running across it, you've got the big main highway, the road running out west.
One of the great treasures of Silchester is its amphitheatre. During its heyday, 1700 years ago, it's thought to be one of the most impressive in Britain, with a capacity of up to 9,000.
Were there really things, gladiators here in little old Britain, the fringes of the empire?
I'm sure that tradition carried on right to the limits of empire. I mean, this amphitheatre was rebuilt on several occasions, and this last occasion when they rebuilt the walls in stone as opposed to wood, I mean, that might have coincided with a visit of an emperor. Emperors did come. Hadrian came to Britain, Septimius Severus came to Britain, and you would think that this would be the place where the emperor might be entertained with the British version of whatever. It would be quite a poor version, I think, but the local version of what happened back in Rome.
From here, Ermine Way heads west, past Newbury and over the North Wessex Downs, similar to the route of the modern M4 motorway. I'm travelling the Roman road of Ermine Way to find out how the empire relied on its transport network to exploit the resources of its newest province, Britain. But I'm taking a slight detour, 10 miles south of Ermine Way, to the museum at Devizes in Wiltshire.
Now, I've heard that in this museum there's an amazing artefact found just off Ermine Way that'll help shed light on how the economy of Roman Britain operated.
Museum director David Dawson has evidence that the Romans weren't just quarrying stones and minerals to trade and export, they were literally mining resources to mint money.
So not far from where we are today, there was a pretty important find of Roman coins, wasn't there? Tell me about it.
Yeah, that's right. It's at the Roman town of Canetio, which is on the road, and there were 55,000 coins found. It's the largest ever hoard of Roman coins found in Britain.
55,000?
55,000.
How much was 55,000 Roman coins worth, or how much would it be today?
Each of these would have been worth, in today's money, about £1, give or take.
55 grand under the ground,
It's quite a considerable amount of money. You wouldn't want to lose that in a hurry.
Why would anyone put 55,000 coins under the ground?
It's insane, isn't it? It's always assumed that the reason for that is that you want to keep it safe. So maybe you're a banker, you're lending money to people, or you're scared that someone's going to take it off you. Today we put coins into a well for good luck.
Yeah.
And the Romans would have done the same. So it may have been for luck, it might have been sort of like superstition, or it might have been actually a formal offering to the gods.
When did the latest type of coins in the hoard date from?
The latest one's around about 275 AD.
Okay, 3rd century.
Third
So the Romans are
century.
still in Britain, they've been here a while.
Very much so.
Julius Caesar was the first person to show his face on a Roman coin in 44 BC. Later emperors followed suit, usually projecting a stern, austere image, as on this coin showing the authoritarian Emperor Domitian in around 90 AD.
How useful are Roman coins when we're trying to put together a picture of what happened in Roman Britain?
Well, as an archaeologist, they're absolutely vital because this coin we know was struck in AD 275. So if you have a wall and you find the coin under the wall, it means it gives you the date it was built.
Right.
So absolutely essential. But also the pattern of the coins, how many are found and where. So that if you're looking at a site like Cunetio and you pick up coins from the surface, it gives you the dates in which the town was in use. So really useful. But also it gives you an idea of the economic activity. So from about this time, about 275 onwards, you start to see a large number of coins in this part of the world. And we think that very much is related to the increase in economic activity.
How did the Roman withdrawal from Britain affect the amount of coins in circulation? I mean, what were the consequences?
The coins are being used to pay the troops. So when Rome says we're not going to pay the troops anymore, the troops have a choice. Do they stay with their army allegiances and go with withdrawal of troops to the rest of the empire to defend Rome, or do they say, I'm going to stay put, but I'm not going to get paid anymore to be a soldier, so they have to become ordinary people. They have to become they're farmers, traders, whatever. So things change from an army defending the people to the people defending themselves, but using the expertise that was built up from the Roman army.
It's amazing how the concept and the basic design of the coin has remained the same from Roman times all the way through today. You know, you've got a ruler on one side and you've got a pretty picture on the other and a few words around it. I mean, it's the same thing.
Exactly the same.
In the 1st and 2nd centuries AD, coins were minted in Rome and imported here. But from around 270 AD, provincial mints were established in London and Colchester. The coins were the grease that oiled the wheels of the burgeoning commercial world in Britain, and the road network helped the wealth to spread all over the province. Pottery was also essential to Roman life, and it too was traded along the road network. Production centres have been found all over the country, including a major one 20 miles south of Ermine Way in Wiltshire. Metal containers were expensive, so ceramics were vital for everything, from large storage vessels to lamps and tableware. The native Britons were familiar with basic pottery, but it was the Romans who introduced industrial techniques. Ceramics historian Graham Taylor is using a method barely changed since Roman times, throwing clay on a disc that's kept spinning by hand.
This is a technique that's been used by potters since probably wheels were first invented, around about 3000 BC, something like that. And as we say, it didn't come to Britain until the Romans. Look at that. But once you've got this machine, all of a sudden you go from a situation where pots are made over a period of hours to pots being made over a period of minutes.
That's really amazing, the way it's just sort of emerging from that ball of clay.
It is a marvel of Roman engineering, but it's a very simple marvel of Roman engineering.
Where does the clay come from?
Romans would have been digging clay wherever they were. In places like Oxfordshire, they find really good supplies of clay, and those good supplies of clay mean that industries grow up around them.
What would a potter's workshop have looked like? You'd have had just this one-man band?
There would have been quite big workshops, probably thousands of potters working in the same area, exploiting a really, really good source of clay.
What sort of people were coming and buying pots? I mean, why do they need so many of them?
Well, we know that if you excavate a Roman fort or a Roman settlement, what you find is a heck of a lot of pottery. It seems to have been considered relatively disposable, so the cooking pots and things would have cracked after a certain amount of use, and they would chuck them out and they'd go and get another one. We don't know how much it was, but it must have been relatively cheap.
How did these sort of new mass-produced pots change the lives of people once the Romans arrived?
You start to see pottery industries growing up very quickly, and you start to see those pottery industries expanding outwards. Interestingly, towards the end of Roman rule, once the Romans abandoned Britain, probably within 50 years of the end of Roman rule, potter's wheels almost completely disappeared again.
How many could they churn out a day?
Well, I mean, a jar like this, it would be pretty easy for a potter to be knocking out 100 a day, something like that.
100 a day?
Yeah. And there you go. There's your pot. And as you can see, at this stage, it's quite soft. So
You made this look easy.
it is easy after the first 10,000.
By the 2nd century AD, a domestic industry had grown that could compete with the continent. Kitchenware made in Dorset has been found at the empire's northern border in Germany. Graham makes pottery look easy, so I'd like to try my hand at this ancient Roman craft.
So
Right.
get that lump of clay and stick it in the middle of the wheel first.
Oh,
Okay, grab
clay
that.
first, yeah.
Whop that. Give
Whop
it.
it?
Yeah, give
Technical
it a
term?
Yeah. Technical term. That should do it. Don't let that stick get too deep because there are trip hazards down there.
Okay,
And then you put the stick down,
Yeah.
water onto the clay, a scoop
Yeah.
of water. Pass me that
Seems
stick.
to stop.
I'm going to give you the master's high-speed
yeah.
spin here.
Fine,
So
all right.
hands out the way.
Yep.
And I mean seriously keep the hands out the way because people sometimes try and reach for the clay while I'm doing this, which is unwise.
That would be a broken wrist.
Yeah,
I think.
that
right
could be.
now. What's
Right,
now?
there we go. And you've got speed. Squeeze that clay as if you're trying to force the whole thing into the middle. Wrap your thumbs over the top so as you stop the top going too far away. Right. Squeezing it in the middle. More water on it maybe. A little bit more water on your hands. Get your hands really wet. Soak it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Now you can start to put a hole down the middle of that maybe. Yeah. Down
Yeah.
you go. So sort of bore down as if you're heading for the wheel head.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's good. Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, now once you think you're far enough down,
That feels
left
fine.
hand still inside, right hand on the outside,
Yeah.
pressing against one another.
Yeah.
So they're pressing together and start to
Okay.
draw the clay upwards.
Come on.
Hey! You've made a start.
I've made a start, and I've even arguably made a pot.
You have made a pot.
Just not a great pot. I mean, it's sturdy.
So far, Ermine Way has crossed 60 miles from Silchester across the North Wessex Downs. Next, it follows the route of the modern A419 to the market town of Cirencester, at its height the second largest town in Roman Britain, known as Corinium Dubanorum. Standing at the junction with another major Roman road, Foss Way, the town saw a lucrative trade in wool and metalwork and used resources from across the country. It became a thriving economic hub. The Romans invaded Britain, at least in part, because of its valuable mineral resources, but just as important was its fertile agricultural land. And it wasn't long before Britain was known as the breadbasket of the Northern Empire. 17 miles from Cirencester, Ermine Way is referred to as Ermine Street, but it has nothing to do with that great road north from London to York. Close by stand the ruins of Great Whitcomb Villa. One of the largest Roman houses in Britain, it's part of a cluster of very wealthy villas in the highly fertile Cotswold area. The great Roman historian Tacitus, describing the conquest of Britain by his father-in-law Agricola, described Britain's soils, and he wrote they are productive of crops, except for olives, grapes and other natives of warmer climes, and rich in cattle. Crops are slow to ripen but quick to grow. Both facts due to one and the same cause, the abundant nature of the land and sky. I'm meeting Susan Greeny, one of the historians involved in looking after Great Whitcomb Villa. I'm particularly interested in Roman Britain's agricultural past. So tell me what we're looking at here.
So this is the remains of Great Whitcomb Roman Villa, and it was built around the end of the 2nd century AD, and it's one of the largest villas here in the Cotswolds, so it's the home of a really rich and wealthy and well-connected family.
How important was the road network to getting this kind of agricultural wealth?
We're about a mile away from Ermine Street here. It's not that far, you could walk to it very quickly. And that's the main road between Gloucester and Cirencester. And so for the people to go to work, if they've got administrative roles, if they're playing a part in Roman government, that's where they would need to go to work, in effect. But it's also where the markets were. So Gloucester and Cirencester both had big markets. They could take their produce that was grown here on the estate and take it very quickly to market. So the road system is really key to where this villa is situated.
And would this have been a sort of one of those luxurious palatial villas, or is it something more functional?
Basically, yes, it was a very high-class building. It had painted wall plaster, bathhouse, underfloor heating, lovely dining rooms. It was like a stately home, in effect. but it was also the centre of industry. So villas were not just homes for a family, but they were also the centre of an estate. And they were places where people would live as slaves and as free men working on the land. There's industry happening here. There's a big centre of agriculture here. So it's a working place as well as a retreat.
What evidence has been found here to show that it had this agricultural function?
One part of the villa near the kitchens is where there's a large barn structure, so that we know people were storing grain, probably spelt, and other products from the surrounding landscape. And we also know that there are many other buildings that form part of this complex down in the river valley, probably more barns, byres for animals, working platforms where people had industry. So there's a whole complex of activity happening here. And the barn and the other buildings tell us that these people were producing much more than they needed just for their own family. They were producing to export as well.
What's so good about this particular bit of landscape? What makes it so suitable for farming?
Well, you might be able to hear there's a spring running behind us. We have fresh water here, which is a brilliant thing that you need for any home. You're also in this beautiful secluded valley on the edge of the Cotswold Scarp, so we can see right down across what is now pasture, and that would probably have been pasture for cattle and for sheep in the Roman period as well. And then down in the valley you've just got incredibly fertile valley system where you've got lots and lots of nutrient-rich fields where perfect for growing the wheat and the grain that was needed.
Grain was the fuel that kept the empire running. Spelt, barley and emmer wheat for bread had all been grown here before the Romans arrived, but never on such a grand scale, and the demand was high for these crops. It's estimated that at the peak of the Roman occupation, the soldiers in Britain alone were consuming 33.5 tons of grain each day. So Britain had this reputation of being the breadbasket of the northern part of the empire. Was a lot of the produce from here going abroad, or did it stay for the domestic market?
Some of it would just have been for the family and their hangers-on here, as it were, but a large proportion of it would have been taken down to the markets, down Ermine Way, to Cirencester and to Gloucester, where there would have been markets to trade the produce. And there people would have purchased it for use in those towns, but also it would have been taken by the Roman army and by Roman administration off and perhaps exported to other parts of the empire.
So did the broader Roman road network across, the whole of southern Britain help that trade, of grain and agricultural produce going out and money coming in?
Yeah, exactly. And at that time they're also using a new type of wheat, spelt wheat, which is particularly hardy but also can be grown twice a year. You can harvest it twice a year, so the amount you can produce is doubled in effect. So people are producing far more than they need to actually consume here in Britain.
After the Romans left at the beginning of the 5th century AD, did other people move in here, or did it sort of fall into rack and ruin?
There's some evidence from late on in the 4th century that they're demolishing parts of the buildings, they're reorganising how the villa works, they're building things like industrial corn dryers inside buildings which otherwise would have been kind of living spaces. And really after probably the mid-5th century, there doesn't seem to be any occupation here. People are not living on this site any longer.
Great Whitcomb Villa is one of more than 450 Roman villas uncovered all across Britain, south of Hadrian's Wall. It shows that Roman agricultural expertise reshaped the British landscape and industrialised farming for the good of the empire, and generated enough income for the occupiers to live in style. I'm travelling the route of Ermine Way, the Roman equivalent of the M4. It starts at the historic remains of Silchester and crosses the North Wessex Downs into Gloucestershire. The journey has shown me how the Romans used their roads to bring industry to Britain and export our resources back to the larger empire. Those mineral and agricultural resources generated a vast amount of income for the occupying Romans. In turn, they needed things to spend that money on. There were crafts that existed before the Romans arrived that the native Britons excelled at and the Romans wanted to buy. Not far from Ermine Way, I've come to Tetbury in Gloucestershire to meet Tim Blades, an expert in Roman-era metalworking. What are you up to?
I'm making a copy of this Roman brooch.
This is a Roman brooch?
This is a bronze Roman brooch, and I've made a mould of it, and I'm going to cast a pewter one.
How do you go about doing it?
Well, it's a very simple process, really. You have this fine, oily sand, and you press the pattern into it, both sides. Open the mould, take the pattern out, put the mould back together, melt pewter and pour it in.
How important was metalworking in Roman Britain?
Well, they think possibly that was one of the reasons they came over here, because they mined copper and lead and silver in Wales, tin from Cornwall. Tin is a crucial ingredient in bronze.
Which metal are you going to work today?
This is pewter, this is mostly tin. It has a few little bits of other metals in it, but it's pretty much what you would dig out of the ground in Cornwall.
So this was the sort of metal that would be mined in Roman Britain?
Yes.
How do you turn that into that?
Well, I will put this into this cast iron ladle, heat it up.
So now you're burning propane here. What sort of temperature does this burn at?
This goes up to over 1,000 centigrade, but the metal will melt and be usable at about 375.
So in Roman times, what were they using? Charcoal?
Charcoal, yes. Little charcoal burners.
How do we know so much about Roman metalwork?
Well, they dig it up all over the place. Things got lost. You know, your house burns down and bits drop into the ashes and aren't found. So you can see it's molten now.
Wow, so it looks just like soup. You wouldn't want to drink it, obviously.
You wouldn't want to drink it, no.
Moment of truth. Let's see. Gone.
That's it.
Now how long does it take to cool?
I can see in there that the top of it is just setting now.
So this is pretty quick manufacturing if you know what you're doing.
Making the mould is what takes the time. Actually pouring the metal is quite quick.
The Romans didn't have buttons or zips, so brooches had a simple but important function to hold clothing together. But they also served as a decoration. The more elaborate the brooch, the more affluent the wearer.
Does it always work?
Mostly.
Wow. There we have it. So this is still a bit hot to handle.
This is still a bit hot to handle, yes. I don't want to burn my hand. So
there we go.
You can see, not very hot.
No, there was no steam or anything like that coming off there, was there?
Rub the sand off it.
How amazing. God, look at the intricacy.
It picks up all the detail.
When you see a really good piece of Roman jewellery, I mean, do you sort of get this appreciation for the hand that made it?
Yes, they're beautiful. They did lovely work.
So this was actually, a very necessary part of society in Roman Britain.
I think they'd have been fairly high status people. It was quite a skill, and it's the sort of thing you would want to pass on. They would have had apprentices and taught them how to do the finer points of it. Okay, there we are. Yours to keep.
Really?
Yes.
My very own Roman brooch. It's just beautiful. I think, just looking at this and the really fine detail in it makes you understand why the Romans wanted to come to Britain, if this was the sort of thing that was easily produced here. But also just tells you so much about the real craftsmanship of the age, how sophisticated these people were.
They were very skilled. They were as skilled as we are. They just didn't have the technology to do the more advanced things.
No blowtorches. That's the only difference. Wow.
Native British metalworking was a truly valuable skill. You can see why the Romans were so keen to have Britain in their empire. My next stop along Ermine Way is at a former Roman fortress.
Gloucester, or Glevum, was established near a major crossing of the River Severn and another important Roman road, Fosse Way. It developed into the sort of town known as a colonia, where army veterans were given parcels of land as a retirement present. And it's the perfect place to explore the Romans' extensive limestone quarrying in Britain.
To find out more about that quarrying tradition, I've come to a location that may at first seem unlikely. The city's Kingsway shopping centre. Archaeologist Andrew Armstrong has promised to show me a treasure trove of Roman history.
Intrigued to see what's down here?
Absolutely.
Just a few metres under the feet of the shoppers above lie the remains of something truly remarkable. A part of Gloucester that's around 1700 years old.
Wow.
Pretty something, isn't it? They're standing about 9 foot high over at the far end.
It's amazing. Andy, what are we looking at here?
We're looking at the remains of the Roman city walls of Gloucester.
Where did they get the stone to build the walls?
Gloucester's built on gravel and clay, so there's no natural stone in the surrounding area, which is a bit of a problem if you're trying to found a Roman city. But the really large blocks here, hopefully you can see some of these really massive blocks, are made from oolitic limestone from the Cotswolds. And the nearest source of that is somewhere like Painswick, which is about 8 kilometres away.
And how would they have transported blocks like this?
One assumes they're simply putting a stone on a cart and bringing it to Gloucester and then repeating the process.
So was the Roman road potentially quite important in being able to build walls like this?
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. The quarry at Painswick is fairly near the Roman road, so one assumes they were using it very much.
Was quarrying a big industry in Roman Britain?
When you think what the early Roman cities are doing in this part of the world, they are building temples, forum basilicas, big public buildings in which people cast their votes and assemble for tax assessment. They're building city walls, they're building townhouses, they're building villas. You need stone, stone, stone for that. So in areas around Bath and around Cirencester, around Gloucester, it must have been a massive industry.
How did the development of Gloucester as a settlement affect the route of Ermine Way?
So the original line of Ermine Way runs straight up to the original fortress in Gloucester, which is not in the city centre at all, it's further north at a place called Kingsholm. Later on, about a decade after that fortress was built, the Romans created a new fortress, a larger fortress, in Gloucester itself, and then they redirect Ermine Way towards Gloucester. And what that's left is effectively a triangle of Roman roads, which still survive today in the street layout of the city.
As we know, the Romans survived the crisis of the 3rd century, but by the 5th century, they'd abandoned Britain militarily. Did the walls survive?
The walls were still standing and used defensively in Gloucester in the English Civil War in 1643.
It's amazing, that's more than 1,000 years.
So yeah, they were still standing, they were still being shot at with cannon by royalist cannon at that time, and they held up very well. Romans are brilliant, aren't they? I mean, this is the most wonderfully made structure. It's massive stonework, gives it great stability, and it's just endured excellently.
The walls served a defensive function long after the Romans left, but 4 centuries of building on top of the remains since the English Civil War means they're now buried under modern Gloucester.
Well, those city walls are pretty amazing. And clearly, with its limestone deposits, its iron and its lead, Britain was bountiful territory for raw materials.
While Gloucester marks the end of Ermine Way, the Romans hadn't reached the end of the road in Britain. The city is their launching pad for a whole further network that stretches west into the territory we now know as Wales. As well as the mineral riches in the Welsh mountains, the forests were a valuable resource too. Timber was fundamental to the Roman occupation, and vast amounts were needed for building and as fuel for heating and cooking. It's estimated at least 1,400 acres of trees in the Forest of Dean were cut down. Other than the timber, the local land has also been known for its exceptional grazing potential, even in Roman times. And the wool from sheep and the cloth woven from it was highly valued across the empire. Much of it went to make the most iconic piece of clothing for high-status Romans, the toga.
Hi, Ursula.
Hello.
How you doing?
Dr. Ursula Roth is an expert in Roman dress.
Why would a Roman have worn this? What's the thinking? Is this just what you wear every day?
This is what you wear every day. The toga that we're going to have a look at in a minute is basically a cloak that goes over the tunic. The tunic itself is the basic garment that everyone would have worn. Everyone would have worn a tunic with a toga over the top or without, or with another cloak.
What did they wear underneath?
It's not sort of the kind of thing that people talk about a huge amount in Roman sources, but we do think that probably they didn't wear underwear, although we do have a reference to underwear in the Vindolanda tablets.
Well, fortunately for us all, I am wearing underpants. What else do I need?
Well, you need a belt. Romans always wore a belt with their tunic.
Really?
And yes.
Why?
And a tunic without a belt was a bit too sort of loose and sort of a bit too relaxed.
Why did Romans wear togas?
Well, the toga, as you'll see in a minute, not all Romans did wear a toga, but toga is a very distinctive garment. It's semicircular in shape,
Right.
which sets it apart from pretty much all the other cloaks of antiquity. It was a symbol of Roman identity and Roman culture, and we have reason to believe that only
full Roman citizens, people who had Roman citizenship, that legal status, were allowed to wear it.
Right, so I couldn't, if I'm just a sort of pleb that's sort of snuck in from Germania or from, you know, the north of Britannia or whatever, I couldn't just put a toga on. That would be a bad thing.
That would be a bad thing. That would amount almost to fraud, because it was almost like a wearable passport, yeah.
Is this how a normal toga went on? There
Yes, yes.
zips or buttons or...
No, it was a draped garment, which is why it was hard to wear. It's not easy to walk in and gesticulate in properly, and this is part of the grace and the importance of the toga, that you had to sort of behave in a certain restrained and controlled way in order for it not to fall off, essentially.
I see.
And so that's sort of tied up with how Roman, especially elite men, were expected to be. As you can see, it's sort of 3 lengths of a man's body, so it's quite a large garment. Of course, originally this would have been made out of wool.
Wool?
Yes.
That's got to be hot.
Yes.
Why would they wear such a hot garment?
Why do men wear suits and ties these days? Do they really enjoy it? Yes.
Fair point.
It's a status thing, and obviously you can't wear this and plough a field or work in a workshop, so this is a status thing as well.
And do we see togas in Roman Britain?
British people started to take on Roman culture, and their young Roman men started to wear the toga, and you could see the toga everywhere.
So in Britain, this would have looked kind of unusual, because only some men would have been wearing it.
It would have been a sign that you were either a Roman official or that you were someone who had Roman citizenship. It was all about showing your rank in your clothes in the Roman world. If you were an equestrian, you would have had a thin stripe. If you were a senator, you would have had a thick stripe. You were what you wore. It was all about showing who you are through your dress, yeah.
So Roman men were quite bitchy about what each other wore then?
We have a story where Cicero, having heard that Caesar had defeated Pompey in the civil war, apparently his first words were, "I can't believe that Pompey was beaten by someone who couldn't even tie his tunic properly."
Wow. The prejudices you uncover.
I know.
Well, I think I look either like a ghost or like a very, very noble Roman. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
I've been travelling the route of Ermine Way, one of the most industrialised roads in Roman Britain. I've travelled 75 miles to Gloucester, and it's here that Ermine Way ends. But spreading out beyond the city are many more Roman roads that made it possible to exploit Britain's mineral wealth. Travelling into the Forest of Dean takes me to a stretch now known as Blackpool Bridge Road. It reveals just how long the Roman road network here has endured. Today this is a pretty nondescript bit of country road that runs under a railway bridge, but if you stop and look by the side of it, what you can actually see is an amazing 85-foot stretch of Roman road. It's really hard to see, and you could drive past very easily without knowing it's here, because we're in the middle of the Forest of Dean, and as you can see it's grown over. But if you pull it back a little bit, you can see these amazing Roman paving slabs. These were laid down nearly 2,000 years ago to connect the mines that are all over this area to local towns like Gloucester, and ultimately it was built to help the Romans extract that amazing mineral wealth, which was one of the big reasons they'd come to Britain in the first place. In Wales there was gold, in Cornwall tin. Yorkshire and Shropshire held abundant lead deposits.
It's long been argued that the main reason the Romans invaded Britain was to access its exceptional mineral wealth, gold and silver, lead, tin and iron. And the reason they knew about all this was because they'd been trading with Iron Age miners in places like here, the Forest of Dean, for centuries. And one thing's for sure, as soon as the Romans did arrive, they set to extracting as much as they possibly could.
A little deeper into the Forest of Dean, right on the Welsh border, there's another example of how the Romans used local knowledge to access raw materials. They needed iron ore to use in their weapons and buildings, and to keep their horses on the move. At Clearwell Caves near Monmouth, very close to the Roman road network, the native Britons had been mining iron for 2,000 years before the Romans arrived. Jonathan Wright has agreed to show me the remains of their old workings.
How important was the Roman road to these mines?
The road runs just in front of the mine, and Roman coins have been found by workmen during the 19th century. So we know that the Romans had used that road, and that would have been the way they transported the iron away from the site.
So this must have been quite a lucrative industry, the iron industry, even before the Romans came along.
The ancient Britons were actually mining before the Romans invaded this particular area, but they took it over and upscaled it quite dramatically because of the needs of their empire.
Was the existence of mines like this one of the reasons that the Romans invaded in the first place?
They were after the minerals throughout Britain, really, but this area was particularly rich in iron, and that was why they decided to move into this area.
Iron was the automatic choice for use in weaponry, armour, vehicle fittings and spindles in millstones. Great amounts of it were needed for the Roman war machine. Britain was the perfect place to fill the need.
What were some of the techniques that they used to get the iron out of it?
You do see pickaxe marks all over the rock wherever you look. Can you see them up over there?
Oh yeah, I can.
You can see the scratches. The brush ore, which they would have wanted most of all, was very rich and very easy to break up, and you would have just hit it with things and it would have broken into small pieces.
With no explosives available, the technique they used involved building a fire against a hard rock face, then quenching the hot rock with water so that the thermal shock cracked the rock and allowed the minerals to be extracted.
What would the Romans have wanted this iron for?
Horseshoes, that's a really important one. Nails was also what they really wanted it for. But they also wanted to make armaments, and so it was used for spearheads.
So this area was really the powerhouse of iron production in Roman Britain?
This was an important place. When the Romans first came into Britain, I understand that they worked the Weald first because that's near the channel. But very quickly they transferred up to the Forest of Dean because the iron was so easily accessible.
The Roman author and historian Pliny the Elder wrote about conditions in Roman mines. He said, "Mountains are excavated by the light of torches, the duration of which forms the set times for work, the workmen never seeing the light of day for many months together. Not unfrequently, clefts are formed on a sudden, the earth sinks in and the workmen are crushed beneath, so that it would really appear less rash to go in search of pearls and purples at the bottom of the sea, so much more dangerous to ourselves have we made the earth than the water."
Ermine Way has brought me 75 miles from the thriving Roman town of Silchester, across the fertile lands of the Cotswolds, and into the woods and caves close by the border with Wales.
Travelling along Ermine Way, I've learned that Roman Britain was a hugely industrious and productive place. It had road networks that stretched off into Europe, agriculture that supplied Roman troops as far away as Germany, and complex cities where cottage industries abounded. But when the Romans left, almost all of that disappeared, not to re-emerge until centuries later.
That era used to be known as the Dark Ages, and with few written records from the time, we don't know why the native Britons forgot Roman production techniques so quickly. What we do know is that 2,000 years ago, the Romans didn't just come to conquer Britain, they led us into an industrial revolution, the Roman way.